this entire year that, this might be a 3 seed, 4 seed, 5 seed, somewhere in there because of what they lost from a year ago. But another loss again, once again, there are no such thing as moral victories, but this is one of those situations where it's like, man, the chances were there for the Gators.
Well, let me just start with this. Both of the games in the Jimmy V Classic were instant classics
100%.
last night. BYU going down by 22 to Clemson at halftime and storming all the way back for, I believe it was the largest comeback in their program's history. And then Florida and UConn, it seemed like they just traded blows with one another. Xavier Lee, who we talked about on the show yesterday, basically going at it back and forth with solo ball. They're just raining points down and everything. But you brought up a good point. This loss matches the same amount of losses they had last year.
Yeah.
And their fourth loss last year came in February, late February.
Right.
Their fourth loss this year, early December.
Yeah.
So, I mean
yeah, it's insane when you think about it. Obviously, last year's team was there was a lot of veteran leadership. You mentioned yesterday on the show you have guys like Walter Clayton Jr. And I think that whenever you do have teams that get off to such hot starts, we've seen this with Bama when they had Mark Sears. We've seen this with UConn when they had Klingon and all those guys. The older teams usually get off to better starts. The younger teams usually have some issues or older teams that just haven't been together for a while.
Right, and this, I think you could say Florida is just an older team that hasn't really been together for a while. I mean, it's Hauk, and then it's also Condon that have really come back for Florida, and that's been their core since, as you mentioned, Walter Clayton's gone, Will Richards gone, so who did they replace him with? Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee, and we kind of didn't know what we were going to get out of Xavier Lee at first, but last night was his first true breakout game, I'd say, dropping 19 points. Three-point shooting is still a little bit of a mystery for him, but going 5 for 14 from the field. I had 6 rebounds and dished out 5 assists, but to me, it really still comes down to you were in the game in the last minute in both of these games. You still have yet to beat a ranked team this year. But you had Duke on the ropes, and then you fall on the road at Cameron Indoor. You have UConn on the ropes, and you just cannot get that killer blow. And I think that's the biggest difference between this year's team and last year's team, because it seemed like Walter Clayton kind of had that killer instinct in him to just put these teams away. And I know we played the interview with Boogie Fland yesterday. It seems like in these late game moments, when it comes down to it, he has the opportunity. He just hasn't seized it yet.
Right.
And they're going to need him to do that down the stretch because, as I've mentioned since we started talking about basketball on the show, in March it comes down to the play of your guards. And right now it seems like the front court is leading Florida and not the back court.
Yeah. Do you think there's enough of a runway might be the wrong word, but do you think there's enough of a, hey, like we've played so well and so tight against these top teams, because remember they opened the season in a close loss against Arizona, who's the number one team in the nation right now. They've also played Duke. They've also now played UConn. I feel sometimes, I don't know which, sometimes in college basketball, I'm like, I don't know if you want to get blown out like Auburn did to Michigan, just get blown off the court and just bury the tape, or just play really tight in these tough games. And yeah, it stings more in the minute, but it shows you're right there.
It's an interesting point that you bring up, because you, as much as you want to win these games, I do think it is better that they're at least single-digit games rather than like 50-point blowouts, because then it's like, okay, we have a massive issue here.
Right.
Time and time again, it seems like that's what Auburn has the problem with, because not only did they get blown out by Michigan, also got blown out by Arizona. So if it happens once, okay, it's a one-off. It's just not your night. Things just, it's like in hockey where you give up 7 goals and then it's just like, all right, we just move on to the next one. But the fact that it's happened a few times for Auburn, maybe the alarm bells start to go off a little bit. But at the same time, when you lose so many close games, that tanks your mentality. Because it's like, okay, we've been in this position before. We should be able to win, but we just, for some reason, every time we cannot get it done.
Yeah. And I think that they'll get more answers, obviously, when they do go to SEC play. But I think you were saying this, and I think it's such a great point, that a lot of times you want to get one of these games, because before you go into SEC play, once you get into SEC play, it's just SEC teams. And so it could be kind of a cannibalized dog-eat-dog world. But in these non-conference games, you want to at least be able to hold your hat on something in case it comes down late in the year. because the thing is that like the difference between maybe a 7 seed and a 4 seed, a lot of times it's the way you played in these non-conference games, and if you don't get a bunch of these Q1 wins, it could just you could be really, really peaking, but it hurts your seeding at the end of the season if you don't get 1 or 2 of these to go your way.
Yeah, and I feel like that was kind of the epitome of what that Arkansas team was last year in the first year under Coach Cal. I mean, you could see that they had the capabilities to win these games. It's just early on in the year they struggled. And then I also go back to UNC, I believe it was, goodness, it's going to be 4 years ago now, when they were the 8th seed and made it all the way to the national championship. So, I mean, it's just the teams that do well early in the year are usually the ones that end up in those 3 or the 4 seeds. But the ones that kind of like what we're seeing right now with Florida, where it's like, okay, you know, you can beat up on the teams that you should beat, but you're losing these close games to tournament teams. You're still going to drop down to that 5 or 6 spot.
Right, exactly. And I think you mentioned the 2 players. You obviously have Condon, a couple others, and Coach Golden. They can go back home every day and look at a national championship ring and say, hey, we've done it before. We have been there before at that mountaintop. Everybody else is trying to get on board. Meanwhile, Coach Golden is looking to get his defense and his offense back on track. He spoke yesterday about the 3-point defense.
I thought they hit some tough ones in the first half. Ball hit 1 or 2 tough ones. They hit a late clock, 3 in the middle of the floor. Obviously, you got to tip your cap when Reeby throws one in there. I don't think that's his strength, but he stepped up and he had a great game tonight. I didn't think we did a good enough job staying in Caravan space in the second half. I thought he hit 2 big ones that were difference makers for us. And, the battle of the 3-point line was a big difference tonight. Well, the challenge that we put in front of ourselves, playing Arizona and Vegas, going to Duke, playing UConn here at MSG Stores South or whatever they call it, we put ourselves in some really tough spots to prepare ourselves, for the rest of the year. And obviously we would have liked to win one of these. But the great thing for us is, I think we're through the toughest part of our schedule. And that's not a knock to anybody that we're playing moving forward, but we're not going to, play. We don't have a top 5 team left on our schedule right now. Moving forward. So I think a combination of us improving in the areas that we know we need to be better. I thought we did a better job taking care of the ball tonight. We got to shoot a little bit better, and we got to capitalize on our second chances. I thought that was a big part of why we weren't able to become victorious tonight.
Now, this is Southeast Sports Plus, and we obviously focus on the Gators, but I do want to turn a little bit of our attention to UConn. It seems like last year was a bit of a dip year for them, considering that they won the previous 2 national championships. Well, it looks like Coach Hurley and company are legit once again this year.
Yeah, and yes, it is a Southeastern Conference show, but this is a team that the SEC is probably going to see again in a few months.
Yep.
And once March rolls around and the tournament starts, they're going to have to keep an eye on this guy right here, Solo Ball. We talked about him yesterday. He's been kind of the talk of Storrs, Connecticut for the last few years now. He's been off to a hot start, obviously dropped 19 points against Florida last night. He's averaging 15 points per game. But, I mean, between him and Alex Caravan, it's kind of been like that 1-2 punch there. And then Caravan obviously was on the team when they went back-to-back. But these were, as we talked about yesterday, the reigning last 3 national champions.
Yes.
UConn went back-to-back, and then Florida. So we knew we were going to get a good one last night.
Yep, I mean, top 5, yeah. Once again, a top 5 for the men's and the women's and for UConn.
Goodness.
And it just seems like there was a scary time in basketball where those 2 teams were just, the men's and women's both in stores, were just absolutely insane.
There was a time where, it wasn't even that long ago, where when you would do the bracket challenge, the men's one was always such a pick 'em.
Yes.
But then you'd like be doing it with all your friends.
Right.
You'd be sitting there like trying to like crunch the numbers and everything. Be like, all right, I want this team, or I think this team's gonna win, or this team looks really good. I like the upset here. And then you get to the women's bracket, you'd all look at each other and it's UConn.
It's UConn, yeah.
Yep. I mean, what did they win? 5 in a row
I think
or something
so.
like that?
Yeah.
Goodness.
There was a couple of those like perfect regular season, like undefeated all the way through the season. Gino Auriemma was building a beast over there, and I mean, you could just rattle off names that ended up going to the WNBA, winning gold medals at the Olympics and so forth. We got a chance to hear from the men's coach over there in Storrs, Connecticut, the always crazy, always effervescent Coach Hurley.
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, I think the defense, the defense is where we need it to be to to compete for the things at UConn that you want to. I thought, I thought we were, pretty good offensively. 18 assists on 50% shooting. And yeah, the strength of the team is it's the 9 guys. I mean, when you have 9 quality players, you could survive an off night, from multiple people and still, get enough scoring production to win the game. But obviously, the rebounding situation. I think when Taras gets back to full strength, I think Taras is, that's twice that Taras is stepped up as a gamer, and I think he's healthy enough now to be able to actually get in practice consistently and sharpen up his game. He got off to a fast start, but then you saw some of the rust. But we don't win this game without his presence on the court. But yeah, I mean, this is a deep team.
So it's a really interesting game there, and I think for Coach Hurley, he knows how to build champions, of course, and it's another tough test for them coming up. A really good Texas team makes their way over to Connecticut. I think that'll be a really interesting game.
Yeah, I still think UConn is pretty much a sure lock with the wins that they've had this year, and then the close loss, I believe it was, to Arizona. They're going to be a surefire top 4 seed. I mean, it just seems like, last year was the one year where it's like, okay, we need a year to reload, because you're not just going to have a guy like Donovan Clingan come in every year and just terrorize everyone. But yeah. UConn is going to be a top 4 seed in the SEC. I don't know who it's going to be, but someone is going to have to run into them, and they're going to run into Solo Ball. Yep,
and he was spectacular then. He'll see if he can continue that against the Texas Longhorns. That game is on Friday. It looks like, on Friday. Meanwhile, Texas will play that game in Hartford, Connecticut. And then for the Florida Gators, they'll play George Washington coming up this weekend. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to South Carolina and catch up with Mariah Ross. Stay with us. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, our number 1 continues, and we've talked a lot of basketball as we've made that transition from football season into basketball season for most of the teams that we cover around the SEC, of course. Some teams playing bowl games, a few teams in the college football playoff. We are excited to be joined by Mariah Ross, who covers one of the best teams in the entire country, the South Carolina women's basketball team. Of course, Texas is a team they played a couple of weeks, about last week now, and lost that game. Thankfully for them, it's not a conference game. The way that it just works out with the SEC scheduling. So still, undefeated in conference play technically, but got a bounce back win there over Louisville. What did you make of the Gamecocks? Coach Don Staley and company aren't challenged this tight this often, but they were able to answer it.
Yeah, and they're definitely able to bounce back from that loss against Texas. Obviously, with Louisville, they kept it pretty close the entire game, but Don Staley is able to find lessons in every single matchup. And with the Louisville matchup, Medina Okot just continues to play super well in the paint. She's getting rebounds, she's boxing out, and she's kind of become a go-to scorer. She's back-to-back SEC player of the week, and she didn't even play the entire game against NC Central. So she's just continuing to show what she can do. And Tessa Johnson, another player who didn't play at all actually in the NC Central game, came out against Louisville and played really well, was 4 of 7 from 3. She led with 20 points in the game and, just continues to show why she is becoming a go-to as well. A lot of the players are playing heavy minutes. 38 minutes for Tessa Johnson, Raven Johnson, Tanaya Latson in that Louisville win. And so they really pushed the limits to see what these women are capable of, and they showed that they're capable of quite a lot.
Did Dawn Staley, hang out with Tom Thibodeau in the offseason? Because, that's like a Tom Thibodeau type offense. Let's just run him out there until, the wheels fall off at that point.
Yeah, and it's not ideal, right? You want to be able to give your stars some rest and allow them to play healthy throughout the entire season. And maybe those 38 minutes caught up to Tessa Johnson, who ended up going down with an illness and didn't play in NC Central. But, you just see the strength that they have. And if they're able to play 38 minutes in the beginning of the season, what can they do when they have that strength and conditioning towards the end of the year?
You talked a little bit about Medina there, and I think she dropped a double-double against Louisville. How important is she going to be in the paint as South Carolina starts to wrap up the non-conference schedule and get into SEC play?
Yeah, well, that was her 7th double-double of the season. She leads the nation in that. So no big flex there.
Yeah,
right?
no
But
big flex at all.
Right. She continues to just show how important of a player she is. South Carolina has, in the last couple of years, especially since winning championships, they've had players who are able to box out, who are able to be super dominant in the paint and get all of the offensive rebounds, get all the defensive rebounds. And when they lost Chloe Kitts before the season even started, I think it was a question of who will step up and fill that role. And Medina is absolutely showing that she's capable of doing just that.
One of the big things with Coach Don Staley's teams is that she can win in a variety of ways, whether it's low scoring and, as you mentioned, just being able to crash the glass and kind of play ugly basketball, so to speak, and then also run it up and just be a free-flowing transition basketball team. What's this year's team? Where will they play the best whenever it's their staple, whenever it's their kind of game? Because we've seen it in wins, we've seen it in blowout wins, close wins, and the lone loss there. What's the mark of this year's team and the way they'll have to play to be able to grind out those conference wins?
I think that's a good point, and because it speaks to the fact that they are still trying to find their identity. It's a lot of young players on this team who are still trying to figure out how to gel and how to work together. And so we saw just that. We saw a win where they had to grind it out, how to be crashing the boards and, doing really well in all areas, defensively especially. And then we saw the game against NC Central where they, ran up the numbers. 106-42 was the win there. And so we're still kind of learning what their identity is, but absolutely playing strong defense and playing well in the paint is always kind of an identity for the South Carolina team. So I'm sure they'll lean more on that, but still trying to figure out what the identity of this particular group is.
One of the things that Don Staley has always been and good at, in my opinion, is being able to not just to talk about just the X's and O's and the players and whatnot, but also just kind of a philosophical standpoint. Before we get your thoughts on this, let's hear Coach Staley talking about games being lessons.
They're all lessons. No matter the competition, they're lessons of discipline. Can we play discipline on both sides of the ball? Can we just play together? And it's challenging. It really is challenging. But I'm glad that we have, some games on our schedule where we can actually be a little more versatile. Just work through some things where, they aren't game deciding decisions being made in the first quarter.
So we were saying on the front end that she's such a good teacher of the game, obviously, but then also being able to use basketball as kind of really more of an umbrella to learn lessons for this team. If you were to maybe point out 3 or 4 things that have really impressed you over the years with Coach Staley and her coaching, now that we have a really strong sample size here, what are some of the things that pop out?
Just the fact that she is so well liked among her players, among the media. I mean, one of the things that she does that no other coach I've ever seen does is she gives the local media time to interview her and hang out with her before or even after she does these kinds of press conferences. So for example, she did that press conference in Louisville and then probably walked right outside and had a little scrum with the local media. And that's just something that you don't see from a lot of coaches. And it's something that just speaks to the kind of person that she is beyond just being a coach. But obviously her coaching ability and just the fact that she was such a talented player, she pours everything into the women that play for her and the staff that work under her. And you just continue to see that through all of the players who continue to come back and acknowledge her, Asia Wilson being one of them, right? Like everybody loves Asia Wilson, and she was coached by none other than Dawn Staley. So just an incredible person, an incredible coach who continues to breed greatness from her women.
Absolutely.
Mariah, now they turn their attention to Penn State coming up, and Penn State's lost 2 in a row. South Carolina looking to eclipse double-digit wins. What are you looking forward to in that game? And I know we just talked about Dawn Staley wanting to use all of these games as lessons. What if you had to picture one lesson and one thing that South Carolina hasn't been really doing well in recent games for them to improve on, what would it be?
Well, they did kind of do it well in this NC Central game, so I'm cheating a little bit on this answer, but just the ball movement and the assist and, kicking the ball out when you don't have the clean open shot, but you see someone out on the wing that has the open shot. And that was something that Joyce Edwards was able to do a lot more in the NC Central game, and that's something that Coach Staley has been calling on her and the other players to do. Just play together. We heard it there in that soundbite. Play discipline, play together. And so I think just moving the ball around a little bit more and taking the shots that are available, not only to you, but making it available for the rest of your teammates is a lesson that they picked up from the NC Central game and something that they hopefully continue throughout the season.
Absolutely. Let's flip it over to the men's side. They're a bit of an enigma because it's a kind of hard team to figure out. Some games they look strong, some they don't. There's 6 teams in the SEC with 3 losses thus far, a few with 4, and one with 5 already. So obviously you don't want to make these rash decisions about what teams are this early into the year. But what do you make of where the men stand right now? 5-3, 6-3 so far on the season?
Enigma is a great word for them. I think they're in a very similar situation as the women, just kind of trying to figure it out and looking for that consistency amongst the guys. Obviously, Michi Johnson has been a really strong player for them. They have a couple of bigs, 2 7-footers on that roster that can absolutely make a difference if they do figure out that consistency and how to all play together. So, like you said, kind of an enigma, and we're still kind of trying to figure out who they are and what they are capable of, and hopefully something we will see unfold as the season continues on.
I feel like Michi Johnson's a little bit interesting because he started his career at Ohio State, and then he came to South Carolina for a few years, and then he went back to Ohio State, and now he's back on South Carolina. So, I mean, he's just going back and forth between these two teams, but he's obviously a seasoned guy. I believe he was there when South Carolina last made the NCAA tournament. Is that a guy that the Gamecocks are going to rely on down the stretch?
Absolutely. And it's somebody that Coach Lamont Paris has really relied on, just similar to what you said. He's a seasoned guy. He's been all kinds of different places, played with all kinds of different players, and is kind of the coach on the floor that I'm sure every coach kind of looks for. And so he's absolutely somebody that they have been able to rely on and is bringing up the younger guys as they try to figure out how to gel and make all of the things work.
3 interesting games coming up. This the Citadel, Clemson, and then South Carolina State. After that, you have Albany. But those teams that are right there all in South Carolina, we know what it is in football. And we talked a little bit about playing those in-state teams in football. What is it like in basketball? Because I'm pretty sure you could draw some Venn diagrams of people you could circle that are South Carolina State fans that are also Gamecock fans. Probably not the same thing with Clemson, but just it's probably a lot of like fans that cross-contaminate there. So what's it like on the court with these rivalries?
Yeah, definitely not the same with Clemson.
No, for sure.
You have that. But like you said, some SC State fans are probably also South Carolina fans, so it kind of goes hand in hand. Obviously makes travel easy when you don't have to leave the state to play a game like this. But there's definitely still a rivalry. I wouldn't say so much with maybe the Citadel or SC State, for example, but with Clemson, you always want to pick up the win over your rival. There is a Palmetto State trophy that gets handed out at the end of the season, and it's based off of all of the wins in all of the sports. And so every single one of these games is being added up, and you always want to be the team or the school at the end of the season that picks up that state win. So that game is still a big one, maybe not quite as big as football, but still one that people are going to have circled on the calendar and want to watch.
I think they're gonna want to get revenge for football there, but we'll turn it to turn it to football real quick here. This and we'll step outside the SEC here. If you told me this bowl matchup between Clemson and Penn State was going to happen in the postseason, I'd be like, oh, that's your national championship right there. And I wouldn't have been surprised. What I would be surprised about is the fact that it's the Pinstripe Bowl and it's at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of fun. And I mean, I've heard some talkings that this was the bowl game that Dabo actually wanted, and who wouldn't want to go to New York and play a game like this? And so it's an exciting one. Obviously, some guys who may not show up for that game just with the draft possibilities and all of those things coming up, but bowl games are a privilege to get to go to, a lot of people would say. And so the fact that they're there again and playing in a fun one against Penn State is a really exciting matchup for them.
Do you expect Cade Klubnik to play in this bowl game or hold out for the draft?
We haven't heard too much about what his intentions are, but I would assume that he would hold out for the draft. A lot of these players do that just with the risk of injury being so large. But obviously it's going to come down to what he wants. Obviously he's a guy that loves Clemson, has loved playing for this team for so many years. And so you would want to go out with your team and, finish your senior year strong. But there's also that possibility that something terrible could happen and you can get injured. So we haven't heard quite yet, but I would assume that he wouldn't play, but we will just have to wait to see.
Final thing, in a mystery world, if you were to give the the Clemson players some truth serum, would they actually want to go to New York in December, or would they actually want to go to the Hawaii or the Bahamas Bowl or
the
Jerry
basketball
World?
Team just went there last night?
All of the ones
That's
you
true,
just
but they
said
play
sounded
indoors.
so much better. Hawaii, Bahamas, I'll take all those places for sure.
I mean, you're going up north and you're playing. I get it. You're playing at Yankee Stadium. It ain't the same Babe Ruth Yankee Stadium. I just feel like
I've been to the Pinstripe Bowl. It's pretty nice.
It looks great on television. I just think that if you're playing, you're like, I want to go to a warm weather city or a dome somewhere.
And I mean, they do say it hurts a lot more when you get hit and it's 30 degrees outside. So bless them. Wish them the best.
Mariah, you are awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here on Southeast Sports Plus and sharing your knowledge both on the court and there on the gridiron.
Hey, it's good to see you guys. Thank you.
Mariah Russ joining us from Spartanburg, South Carolina. We've said it all the time, our favorite aunt here on the show. Got a chance to talk with her in the break about being able to see her nephew, which is always good. And you said, I didn't know you've been to the Pinstripe Bowl.
Yeah.
So is that a
So here's a little piece of knowledge about me. I've been to a football game at Yankee Stadium before I've been to a baseball game at Yankee Stadium.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because when Syracuse played Minnesota in the Pinstripe Bowl, I believe it was 2022.
Yeah.
That's when I went, and it was just such a weird experience because you have all the retired numbers out in the gaps, and the band is just out there playing, and it's just it's so weird, but it is a good atmosphere. You just got to bundle up because it's cold, and there is the sun's out for 2 seconds during the game, and it's a 1 o'clock kick.
Yep. As of right now, I went to go check the line because I always check the line when these southern teams go up north to play teams that are used to the cold.
Yeah.
Clemson's actually a 3-point favorite against Penn State, who
I
will
like
be
that.
acclimated to the weather.
I like that.
I mean, they're playing really well, but as Mariah said, we don't know who's in, who's out right now for Clemson. We will find that out pretty soon. December 27th, 11 a.m. is the kickoff of the Pinstripe Bowl. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Oklahoma and talk some Sooners and Tide in the College Football Playoff. We are back here on Southeast Sports Plus and gearing up for what should be a very interesting college football playoff highlighted by a few games. The first game right out of the block is, of course, the 8 seed versus the 9 seed. So happy to have Brian Brinkley back with us here on the program. First of all, Brian, when you saw the seeding comes out, I think a lot of people were pretty much knew what was going on there. When you saw Alabama coming in on the number 9 line after Oklahoma on the 8 line, what was the reaction for you, your staff, and just the fans over there in Sooner Nation?
I think the general feeling is not thrilled. Yeah. And I don't think it's not because they don't think they can beat Alabama again. It's just they just played this game a few weeks ago. Yeah. And as I've said, the NCAA basketball tournament has these protocols where they try to, keep the conference teams apart for as long as they can. So they'll move seeds up and down to avoid that. Football obviously is not doing that. And you don't play enough football games in a given season to have this kind of a situation. This is just I just don't like. I mean, Tulane's playing Ole Miss again. If Ole Miss wins that, they're going to play Georgia again. Right. What are we doing here?
I mean, Brian, we almost had 3 in the first round if Notre Dame stayed in and would have played Texas A&M again. I mean, there's just so much going on, and I don't understand it. I don't understand these rematches early. If they're down the road, like you mentioned with the basketball tournament, that's fine. Have them down the road. Don't make them the first game of the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think teams – I mean, in the end, obviously you care if you're a top 4 seed. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between 4 and 5 and then 8 and 9. But as long as you can maintain – that part of it where the teams that are going to host home games stay in there and the ones that get by stay in there. But other than that, who cares about your seed? And let's just see different games. There's, I'm not crazy about conference championship games being rematches, but sometimes you don't have a lot of choice there. And that goes back to another thing that I think is an issue with this and doesn't solve all the problems, but I don't understand. Well, I kind of understand, but all these conferences just do not want to have divisions anymore.
Yeah, right.
Which I think in the case of the ACC this year might have helped them if they'd had divisions.
Yes.
They didn't, and we're left with all this chaos. But in the old Big 12, they had divisions, so sometimes you would have rematches and sometimes you wouldn't because the South would play the North. They'd just play 3 of the 6 teams. I don't know exactly how it worked with the SEC. We were in the Big 12 back in those days. Right. But yeah, going back to the rematch is not exciting, but I think also, generally speaking, OU fans are just thrilled to have a home playoff game. They're thrilled to be back in the playoff for the first time since 2019. So in that sense, they don't care. But I just personally would rather see someone else other than Alabama, but that's the way it is. As I always say, college football always finds a way to get it wrong, one way or the other.
It's a good way to put it.
This year is definitely no exception to that. But what is the atmosphere like in Norman right now as they gear up to host a first-round college football playoff game? I know the university is canceling classes on Friday, so, I mean, that's going to be a treat on campus leading up to that game.
Yeah, it goes back to the old saying by the Oklahoma president back in the 40s that they want a university that the football team can be proud of. And that's kind of what this is. Football rules the day, so no final exams that day, which, I get it. And it's also graduation, too. They're having to move that around. I don't think there's as many commencement ceremonies in December as there is in May, but they're having to shift that around as well. Fan-wise, I think everyone's pumped. I mean, 12 months ago, he was 6-6 getting ready to play in the Armed Forces Bowl and eventually lost to Navy, and we're 6-7. And we talked about this a week or so ago. How many games did Brent Venables need to win this year to keep his job? Right. He succeeded there. So where we are from where it was 12 months ago, Sooner fans are pumped about this. And now, is the offense clicking the way it needs to be? No, but they're in it, and as long as you get in it, you never know what can happen. We saw what Ohio State did last year, got on a roll and won it all.
Yeah, you touched on my point because the thing that I think about this tournament is that everybody plays, like outside of maybe JMU, Oregon, which I think we all know how that was going to go. It feels like everybody's already got a bead on this game. Okay, well, the offenses will be terrible. The points will be at a premium, and this game will end, 10-7 or whatever the case is. As you look at the first game for Alabama, Oklahoma, to what they will present on the field coming up next week and the teams that you've seen in between then, what are some of the ways that Oklahoma will have to execute in order to be able to come away with the win outside of just, playing phenomenal defense and coming up with 10 sacks?
Well, I think it's the old saying about keep doing it till they stop it. And for Oklahoma to keep doing what they were doing with pressuring the quarterback and causing havoc for the Alabama offense until they can figure out a way to move the ball. Keep doing that. They've done it 2 years in a row now. They did it in Norman last year. They did it in Tuscaloosa this year. Now they get to play them in Norman again. And so far, Alabama has not really solved that problem very well. So from that standpoint, I say keep doing it. Oklahoma offensively, they gotta get in a running game established in some way. Of course, you can say the same thing about Alabama, but I think the comfort level of being at home is going to help. Oklahoma has played better at home, even though they got 2 big road wins against Tennessee and Alabama. And people kind of forget a little bit. The Ole Miss game was a rainy day. I don't know how much that affected the Sooners, and right. I don't know, what kind of a wet ball thrower John Mateer is, but that was a rain game. So I think Oklahoma's got to be able to establish the running game, and as long as they can make 2 or 3 big offensive plays, whether it's a run or a pass, that might be enough to win the game. And then special teams has been fantastic for Oklahoma this year. The SEC all-conference teams coming out yesterday. Tate Sandell, first-team all-SEC kicker. Grayson Miller, first-team all-SEC punter. Yeah, that too. That's the first time in the history of OU football they've had the first-team all-conference kicker and punter. And OU's got a pretty good football history.
Yeah.
And then Satania was second-team all-purpose. So I think Oklahoma's got an edge in the special teams as well.
I feel like when I saw that this matchup came out, and Gerhard was a little bit surprised that Alabama was a 1.5-point favorite going on the road, and seeing what happened last time, I said to him, I think it's maybe because it's so hard to beat a team twice, and for Oklahoma 3 times in the last year. But when you look at this game, it's hard to not think, oh boy, it's going to be a defensive slugfest. I mean, is that what it's going to come down to? Because, we don't know the status of Jam Miller, and the run game for both teams, as you mentioned, has been a little bit of a question. So could we see 20-plus possessions in the first 3 quarters? It just goes back and forth?
Yeah, we might. It might be the possession length may be determined by turnovers. Does someone cause a turnover early in the possession or late in the possession? I think it will be low scoring. I think if I don't know if the coaches aren't going to tell you this, but maybe the first to 20 wins or someone can get to 20 points. That's probably going to be enough. I just can't see it being anything other than a low scoring game. And as far as the rematch, OU's got a pretty good history in rematches. I wrote it down. I don't have it here with me, but a lot of those Big 12 titles OU won, that was a rematch and they won it. And they even had, I think, 4 or 5 occasions where they went 3-0 against a team over a 2-year span many times. Now, were they Alabama? No. Right. But is this the best Alabama team ever? No.
Yeah.
That's not the case either. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. And as Brent Venables said on his Zoom call Sunday, there's not going to be any newfangled things that each team's throwing at each other. They know what each other does. They're just going to come down to executing and who can execute the best.
Absolutely, and we got a chance to hear from Coach Venables, hoping history repeats itself, as Brian mentioned, that this proud program, very, very good at rematches.
The challenges of playing somebody you didn't play was getting to know who they are and really don't have a great idea how you match up in certain areas. This is one that there's familiarity with both teams. 3rd time that we're playing in, just a little over a year. And obviously, we have tendencies. They have tendencies. They have certain matchups they like. We have certain matchups that we like. But at the end of the day, you can throw that all out. It's time to, start completely over. And, all that matters, good or bad, from the past, all that matters is what you do, here and moving forward.
So, Brian, we'll set football aside for a second. We have some chances to digest that coming up next week. Let's go over to basketball. A bit of a kind of an up and down year so far early on for the Sooners. Some things to hang your hat on, some things that might be causes for concern moving forward. As you digest this team 9-10 games in, what are some of your early thoughts?
Well, inconsistency is the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, the Wake Forest game, I thought that's the best they've looked all season. Then Arizona State just blows them out right from the start, and they were never in it. So I don't know what to think now. And Porter Moser may not know what to think, and they better get it fixed because it's Bedlam on Saturday, and OSU's undefeated so far on the season. So I think that's always the challenge when you have so many newcomers coming in, is how they gel with each other and what kind of chemistry there is. And I think they're still kind of searching for that. And I said last week how this is a critical couple of weeks here. They got the win against Wake, lost to Arizona State. Now you have another important non-conference game with Bedlam on Saturday against an undefeated team that's almost in the top 25 now. They got to get some things figured out because SEC plays just a couple of weeks away.
I feel like, Oklahoma and then Oklahoma State right now are kind of like going on completely different paths, because last year wasn't really a great year for OK State. OU made the tournament, obviously, and then the year before, it really wasn't a great year for OK State either. You have to go back a few years when they had my guy Javon Small over there in Stillwater. Sorry the Mountaineers had to take him from you, but when you look at this game last year, and Oklahoma did pull out the win, how important? I know you talked about, Oklahoma just needs to find that consistency. How important would a win here be for the Sooners?
I think it'd be really important, but then I thought the Wake game that maybe turned a corner, and then it just didn't go well against Arizona State. So it's hard to say, but this will be their last really challenging game before SEC play starts. And the SEC looks like it might be slightly down, but it was incredible last year, so it's probably had nowhere to go but down just a little bit at least. But I think it is important because this Oklahoma State team is playing with a lot of confidence. They are much better offensively. They got more weapons on the floor, a lot more than they had a year ago. I think if anything, their weakness maybe is on the defensive end so far this year from what I've seen out of them. But this would be a game Oklahoma needs to use as a springboard going into conference play, which is not far off.
Yeah.
If the Sooners were to drop this game as well, is it time to start having conversations about Porter Moser's future?
It's a good question. They've been right there on the bubble every year, either getting in or not getting in to the NCAA tournament. And the SEC, gets so many teams in the tournament, it's hard to not make the tournament if you're in the SEC. But they have some veteran guys. They've just got to be able to figure out how to play together. And they just haven't been able to do that yet. And sometimes it just never happens. Or sometimes it happens too late for it to do any good. But the SEC is going to be merciless. You better get it fixed. Better get it figured out, because you can't be figuring stuff out in late January or into February when you're going through a brutal SEC. Every single SEC team that plays in Norman this year made the tournament last year.
Wow.
Of course, almost all of them made it anyway.
For sure. Right. But still.
So even their home games are going to be tough.
Yeah, there's definitely a hard strength of schedule, especially in league play. Final thing before we let you go, this might be hard to quantify, but with the Bedlam football game now out because of what we've seen with conference realignment, does it put a little extra energy in the basketball games? And I'm sure Saturday will be a story in and of itself because of where both teams are right now. But I just feel like maybe some of that energy might pour into this rivalry on the basketball court. Is that the case?
It might possibly, basketball just doesn't. Now, there were times where basketball was right up there when it was Eddie Sutton against Kelvin Sampson. Almost every time they played, they were both ranked, and both arenas would be packed.
Right.
This goes into kind of a long story, but the Thunder and their success, first of all, just the Thunder coming here, but certainly their success has dimmed the interest in college basketball in the state. And OU and OSU have not been great in that time, other than the Buddy Hield Final Four team. So it could a little bit, but football's the real thing that powers the Bedlam interest more than anything else. Now, I think we're going to get two pretty good games, and the women's game is going to feature two teams that are ranked. It's part of a doubleheader on Saturday in Oklahoma City, and that's it'll be the first time both women's teams have been ranked when they faced each other since 2016. I hope a bunch of people. First of all, I hope there's a bunch of people there to start with. But I hope a bunch of them stick around for the women's game after. Basketball is not quite at the football level, and it's also, it's a weekend in December when people are Christmas shopping and all kinds of stuff. So I don't have a guess on what kind of attendance is going to be there, but I know definitely from the Oklahoma State side, the way they're going, they would love to get a win over Oklahoma, stay undefeated, because they want to get the football series.
And that's kind of what I was hinting
again.
Right, that's kind of what I was hinting at, because of Oklahoma State. It seemed like they did not want to get rid of the football rivalry. If their hatred for Oklahoma was like, hey, if we can't get it in football, let's tack maybe 15 more points on in basketball or whatever.
Right. Well, and the credit to the administrations at both schools for getting the men's. They didn't skip a year. They played last year. The women, it took an extra year to get it going, and then all the other sports basically have kept Bedlam going. I just wish they would play more. Like, there's only one softball game. I don't know why they're not playing more. There's only one baseball game, and those sports where you play 60 games, come on, let's get 2 or 3. Exactly. It's just they play these non-conference games. Like baseball will play Dallas Baptist and Wichita State, both of them, or Oral Roberts play each other 2 or 3 times. But it's good that and most of the coaches from each side and all those sports get along pretty well. But I do think this is a cool thing, because we had the All College Classic here in Oklahoma City for years. And it used to go by the phrase, the nation's oldest holiday classic. It went back to, I think, the 30s maybe. And Pete Maravich played here, and Bill Russell, and all kinds of superstars. And that slowly died out, and now it's gone. So this is kind of a nice little substitute to have Bedlam and have a men's women's doubleheader. So I'm looking forward to Saturday and seeing what that's like.
Absolutely. It should be a great couple of weeks over there in Oklahoma City with Bedlam this week, and of course college football playoff next week. Brian, thank you so much for joining us here on Southeast Sports Plus.
Thanks. Enjoyed it as usual.
Absolutely. Brian Brinkley joining us from Oklahoma City. Busy couple of weeks, and he kind of alluded to it. You bring the history of both these teams in from a basketball perspective. I'm kind of interested to see the way that game plays out there Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I thought it was a good point that you brought up, maybe that there might be an added edge because there's no more Bedlam in football as of right now. But as we're talking about football, it's going to be a crazy atmosphere over there in Norman next weekend. And I heard today that College Game Day is going to go to Norman Friday and then, make the trip down to College Station on Saturday. So it should be a great weekend.
Yeah, the Sooners don't seem like they care about Bedlam at all. They just care about winning a national championship, and they're a few games away of doing just that. Stay with us here on Southeast Sports Plus. We have our overreactions next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we have our overreactions. We like to do this throughout the midweek, and we see and digest everything in the college football world. Who's going first?
I'll go first here real quick. Ole Miss is going to the college football playoff semifinal, and here's why. They're going to beat Tulane again. It's a rematch. Yes, I know it's hard to beat a team twice, but you could say the same thing for their potential quarterfinal matchup against Georgia. So Ole Miss, they're basically a lock. Kentucky's a lock to be a first-round exit. I just have zero faith in this team at all this year under Mark Pope. And then Navy, since it's the Army-Navy game, Navy's going to crush Army.
Okay, I like it. All right, here's my 13th game for everyone on the bubble of the college football playoff. Listen to John Gruden. Listen to Vanderbilt, who wanted to make it happen last week. Also, I love these football and basketball matchups being side by side. We're seeing with Tennessee and Illinois and all these other games. Let's get more football and basketball matchups. And let me react to something that's going to happen next week. When Diego Pavia doesn't win the Heisman, he should win the Heisman, so I'm overreacting in the future. Because I can't overreact because it hasn't happened yet, but I know it's going to happen. So I'm calling it a pre-action. Diego Pavia should win the Heisman.
Get the SEC bias out. He's going to win the Heisman. You cannot tell me he's not better than Fernando Mendoza.
Exactly. I just don't know if he'll get it. Just like our friend Corey Curtis talks about. We will have hour number 2 of Southeast Sports Plus next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Well, the Alabama Crimson Tides, they've already hosted Purdue when they were top 2 in the nation, whichever poll you want to look at. Then they've already played another top team in the country earlier this year, played St. John's. And then now they're playing another top team in the country to play Arizona. Of course, obviously smashed in between those teams like Gonzaga, Illinois, and others. And now another top-ranked team will be coming to the state of Alabama, not necessarily to Coleman Coliseum in Tuscaloosa. They'll play over in Birmingham. Alabama is set to face the number one team in the country in the Arizona Cardinals. And I said that with some pause because my friend Patrick Walsh, who joins us here, he thinks that another team that wears the maize and blues is the number one team in the country, and the coaches do too.
Well, they just showed it to me last night with just another pounding of another team.
Michigan,
they just ran Villanova out of Ann Arbor. Like it's just actually unreal that Michigan is somehow ranked behind Arizona. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter to me because Arizona and Michigan are far and away the two best teams in college basketball right now. Arizona led by freshman Koa Pete. I mean, no one really thought that he was going to have the big impact that he had in the first game against Florida. So Arizona's already got a few nice wins over SEC teams coming off that huge win over Auburn. But, this is a big game for Alabama because, in my opinion, this is going to set the stage between, hey, are you going to be that 3 seed? Is this your rise back up? Are you going to come back to what you were 2 years ago? Or is it going to be, we're going to make the field. We're going to have great offense, but it's just going to be, you just cannot get over the hump.
Yeah, I really love what Alabama did with their schedule this year because obviously played, as you mentioned, a lot of tough teams already, but smashed this game right before the college football playoff, understanding that Bama might be in the CFP, and this is a chance to get their eyes on another big-time team coming to the state of Alabama, and then Alabama once again playing this game over at Legacy Arena in the BJCC, that CM Newton Classic, honoring a former Alabama great coach there, and obviously going to another big venue, lots of Alabama graduates that are in the Birmingham area. And for those who aren't familiar with Birmingham and Tuscaloosa, those two cities are only like 45 minutes apart. So it'll be really tight there. So, it's kind of like when Alabama played St. John's. It considered it a neutral site game, but that thing was 80%, 90% St. John's fans. It'll be the same thing for Alabama, 80 to 90% Alabama fans. You mentioned Koa Pete, and if I'm making a short list of maybe the 5 best players so far through the season, most teams have played in and around 10 games so far. You can't make a list of 5 players without having Koa Pete on there with the way he's played. Obviously, Cam Boozer's played well. There's another guy that'll be on that same court, LeBaron Philon, who's played well as well, but Koa Pete's been sensational.
Yeah, he's one of a few freshmen where I think I said this the other day. It feels like the NBA just only targets freshmen when they're looking at the draft. Rarely ever do you see a guy like Zach Edey, stay for as long as he did in college basketball and then continue to actually be drafted. And he's having, I believe, a nice year with the Memphis Grizzlies. But Koa Pete, he's not going to shoot the 3. He's a big man, but he's averaging close to 16 points per game. He's got the 5 rebounds per game, shooting north of 50% from the field. And honestly, the free throw numbers aren't great, but for a big man, 67% is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely is. And he will be a handful. I think I read a stat that Alabama might be, top 10 as far as 3-point shots attempted so far this year.
That doesn't surprise me.
And I think Arizona is second to last in the country at attempted 3-point shots. These two teams play polar opposite styles of basketball. We'll touch more on Arizona in a minute. We'll hear from their head coach. But let's go back to Alabama because the one big player for them has been LeBaron Philon, and he has been a sensational not only player but leader for this basketball team and the reigning SEC Player of the Week.
Yeah, reigning SEC Player of the Week when he tied his career high in points with 29 against Clemson. That was, when you look at that game for Alabama, you jump out to the big lead. But, you kind of got a gut check there towards the second half because if I recall correctly, Clemson lost by, 6 points.
Yes.
And Alabama was well within away from Clemson at one point in the game. But we saw Clemson earlier in the year. The Tigers are known for the comebacks. They weren't on the right end of one last night, so you almost got to wonder where the mentality is for them there. But I mean, we've been talking about it. I seriously think LeBaron Philon's probably going to be a lottery pick this year. I know he's not a freshman, as I mentioned.
Right.
So maybe that might stir some teams away with age, which I find a little bit interesting.
Me too.
Because it's like, what, you want to get a few extra years out of a guy? I mean, we saw, I don't know, Reed Shepherd. I think went pretty early. I just don't understand the wanting just guys one and done. I mean, when they're like 19 years old,
and
in comparison to like 21 or 22 year olds.
Correct. Not to mention that. I mean, there are only a handful of rookies that I can think of that have actually contributed to major winning in the NBA.
Yes.
You just don't get it from rookies for the most part. You get it from guys that have been there 3-4 years. Typically, guys will start to peak. Even the greatest of the greats, like LeBron James and others, you don't normally peak as a rookie. So I don't understand, like you said, the obsession to go with the number one guy always being a freshman and then having questions about them if they stay for that extra year. Guys a lot of times use that extra year to develop, and especially in this day and age when you can make millions of dollars or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars and stay in college and develop. If I'm an NBA scout, I would actually like that more from a development standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I could, maybe somewhat understand it with football because the careers are shorter and you know, at some point you just take too many hits and then you're like, all right, you know, I don't want to really do this anymore.
Yeah.
But with basketball, I will say this. I'll say it with a little bit of respect. I think basketball is just a little bit less physically demanding than football is.
It is.
I know it's taxing on the body going
from a travel standpoint. Yeah.
Travel, you know, ACL, Achilles tears, which, I mean, if we want to talk about injuries in sports recently, I cannot fathom the amount of Achilles tears we have seen over the last year. It's just like a spike all of a sudden. So, but anyways, back to it. I still am just shocked that we've just gone to, because, I mean, you're not going to find a Kobe Bryant all the time.
Right.
Like I just don't understand it.
Right.
Like, let these guys go to college, develop a little bit. And I think we're going to see that more often with NIL, obviously. But it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if it ever will, but that's just my take.
Well, the track for LeBaron Philon seems really great, and he has led this team through a nice stretch here. Coach Nate Oates and company put together a really, really tough schedule, and we'll see, like, the fact that, you know, they've been able to kind of grind out some games here as of late and be able to win some close games. We talked about this with Florida. They don't have that marquee win on their schedule so far. Bama does have a few of these in their last few games. Yeah,
they do have a few nice wins going back to the Players era. The last 4 games really won't show it as much as some of that 4-game stretch where they played 4 straight ranked opponents at 2-2. But I mean, blowout win over UNLV to round out the Players era. A blowout win against Maryland. It should have been a blowout win against Clemson, but good on the Tigers for coming back in that one. And then a blowout win against UT San Antonio here. So this is going to be their first big matchup since that big stretch right before the Players era.
Absolutely. Head coach Nate Oates for the Alabama Crimson Tide talked about some of the things that he wants to see from his team from a turnover perspective.
Yeah, it was great. We had 0 at the half. I mean, I thought we had a couple on underneath out of bounds plays. We got to get that cleaned up. We didn't look very good on our underneath out tonight. When did we have fewer than 5? I didn't. Creighton. Yeah, 23. Yeah, Creighton's a lot different. They definitely went all in on the effective field goal percentage defense with Kalkbrenner and just try to push you down to him, so that would make sense. So, no, I thought our guys really moved the ball. You know, Austin's teams have been pretty aggressive up in the gaps. So, you know, we tried to move the nail help and just really emphasize you're going to get 2 on the ball, just get rid of it. So first half, I thought we did a much better job of it than we did in the second. Thought we shot it worse in the second, had the 5 turnovers in the second. The ball just didn't move nearly like it needed to in the second half.
I know the SEC is a completely different beast, but in 3 months, where do you see this Tide team, given how they've played in some of the games we've seen, both in the neutral site games as well as the true home games and true road games?
You know, this game will really tell me, But, I mean, it'll also tell a lot of people because you look at that 4-game stretch that they went on, going 2-2. The loss to Purdue definitely hurt. The loss to, I believe it was Gonzaga, also hurt. But you got some wins over some good opponents. And then you beat St. John's. You beat Illinois. So it's hard to gauge. But I think I'm going to make a bold prediction.
Okay.
An absolute bold prediction for it being this early in the year. This is a must-win game.
Oh, yeah.
You have to win this game. And I know there's going to be more games on the schedule. You still have the entirety of the SEC play.
Right.
You have to win this game.
Yeah.
Because if you win this game and you just handle business, you win 3 of the 4 games, like 3 out of every 4 games that you should win.
Right.
I think Alabama's going to be a number 2 or a number 3 seed, and that's exactly what you want going into this tournament. I don't think they're going to be a number 1 seed, but if they are, I think where this game's going to be playing over in Birmingham, I think Birmingham's hosting the first 2 rounds again this year.
Yeah.
So just like a few years ago when they were the number 1 seed, it's not going to be a far trip for them.
Exactly, and they can secure themselves a spot right there. Alabama is the number 12 team in the country right now, so if there were a bracket that were put out right now, as I know this is a silly exercise, but if there's a bracket that put out right now, they'd be, what, a 4 seed?
3. I think the latest projection was a 3 seed.
It was a 3 seed, yeah. So so they could stay right in that bubble or move up, as you said, with a big win over Arizona. Let's turn over to the Wildcats now. They made that jump to number 1 in the country in the AP poll, number 2 in the coaches poll. Still runaway, as you said, with Michigan as the top 2 teams in the country. They're coming over a win over Bama's biggest rival, the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, and I've been saying it all week. It's just, it feels like it's the year of the blowout, and this one was no exception. We talked about it. Tahad Pettiford had 30 points for Auburn in that game, but only had 1 assist, and that's not going to win you a lot of games. But, Arizona's deep. And as you mentioned, they like to score in the paint, and then Koa Pete will obviously help you. So it is an interesting dynamic because Arizona's probably going to be the more consistent scoring team. Like you'll see consistency because it's not rocket science. The closer you are to the basket, the more likely it is for you to score.
Right.
But Alabama, with their 3-point shooting, will never be out of a game.
Yes.
I tell you what, I was rewatching that UTSA game. And some of these shots are diabolical.
Yes. Yep.
Like way downtown. Like this Steph Curry range.
I was listening to our friends at the next round. They had Coach Nate Oates on, Jim Dunaway, who's been on this show before, Ryan Brown and Lance Taylor. They do a great job over there. But they had an interview today with Coach Oates, and he threw out a stat. Coach Oates is a numbers guy. He threw out a stat today that blew my mind. They shot 57 three-pointers in that game against
57?
UTSA. 57. Meanwhile, Arizona shot 16 total in their previous game. Nate Oates made the joke that Alabama probably shot 16 three-pointers before the first half, the second media timeout. Like, that's how much they were shooting. So, like, it's such a complete opposite set of styles in this game because Bama's going to run and gun and shoot. I don't know if they'll shoot 57 in Birmingham.
Do you have the box score up?
And shoot it up.
All right, here we go. We're gonna play our favorite game. Guess the amount of shots that Alabama took from the field. I've gotten this right once before.
On the money.
It is, right on the money, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to brag or anything. All right, so they scored 90.
They scored 97. They won 97-55.
97-55, and they shot 53 pointers. They had to have shot 80 shots from the field.
82.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are we doing here?
82 shots.
I kind of made it a joke about Nate Oates runs an NBA-style offense when I first said it. I wasn't truly being serious.
Yes.
Now I think I might actually have to be serious about this.
Yes, exactly.
This is an NBA style.
Yes, and there's some NBA teams who won't shoot 50-plus three-pointers in a game. It is crazy. But, I mean, and they played the Roadrunners, and they were making them run all over the court. I tell you what, but I do think Arizona will slow it down. But another thing that I heard from Coach Oates there in that interview, which I thought was pretty interesting because I'll go into the game thinking of it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Because anytime you think of teams that play the half-court style, you think they slow it down and it's really, really methodical. They wait till 4, 5, 10 seconds in the shot clock. Apparently that's not this Arizona team. They get into their sets really quickly, so they actually play with tempo even though they don't shoot a bunch of three-pointers. So it feels like the pacing, the tempo might be leaning Alabama's way even though Arizona has the chance to control those kind of games, even if they go fast.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it on the surface, you would think this Arizona team is kind of like the Virginia teams of years past under Tony Bennett, where it was, all right, slow the game down.
Right.
I mean, it felt like more often than not, Tony Bennett's teams would have the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Goodness, I'm blanking on Malcolm Brogdon. It was one of the big ones. But I don't know.
Yeah.
This is like one of those games where it's like it's such a toss-up.
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Alabama to not. So when I'm thinking about this game, it's going to be tough not to just throw up a ton of three-pointers. And then they're not falling, and then it's like, okay, Arizona's scoring basically 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, so consistent. And then it's like, all right, you gotta throw some more 3-pointers up. I don't know, it's gonna be tough, but I think if the threes are falling, and this is not really a great projection, if the threes are falling, Alabama wins this game by 10.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds about right because, I mean, obviously they can control it, and they do like that style of basketball. The Cats in these last few games got a big win over Auburn. This is a team that seemingly just they when they play their brand, they play their style, they're almost unbeatable. Just before we toss the break, let's hear from head coach Tommy Lloyd. They're on this team continuing to be physical.
Well, it's something we work on a lot. I mean, there's ways to be physical without fouling. We want to be as physical as we can be, but we talk about playing clean basketball and, in contesting, the shots within the rules. And that's what we really focus on. But, hey, they also did a good job of, when you get down sometimes in those games, you need to make the game a little uglier and, put your head down and drive and, get to the bonus and, kind of make the game a little choppy. And they did a good job of that, So I wasn't ever sitting there thinking, this thing's done. I mean, with, 12 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go, I mean, they were feel like they were just marching to the free throw line. So I told our guys, we got to play better defense without fouling. I mean, it's as simple as that. And for stretches we did, but I'm sure there'll be some fouls we'll look at that we wish we could clean up.
Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we check in with one of our favorite guests, Courtney Mims, who actually helped me make a correct prediction last week on this program. We will see if we can get that crystal ball rolling once again on Southeast Sports Plus next. back here on Southeast Sports Plus. We roll on with hour number 2. Last time we checked in with our good friend Courtney Mims. She was on the road, just booking it on the road to I think were you going to the basketball game, or were you going to a signing day and then the basketball game?
She was going to the basketball game.
Or it was the basketball game, and then I know that the new head coach got introduced the very next day. I don't know if you stayed there for both those events, but great to have you back on once again. And I have to thank you personally because I was able to make a correct prediction on the show.
I'm sorry I didn't listen.
I made a correct prediction on the show because I listened to you. You said the building, Bud Walton, will be absolutely jumping and Arkansas will pull off a win. You were dead on, and this is your time to gloat.
You know what? And Patrick, I appreciate you for saying that you should have listened.
Yeah, that's my
because
fault.
I don't typically, and I said this, I really feel like Arkansas is going to win this game. And they did. I think I even mentioned this too. I can't remember if I was on the road and my brain was not working properly, but I think I even mentioned that Louisville likes to take a lot of threes. And Patrick, we know from this season that Arkansas' 3-point defense, little struggling.
Struggling.
I said, if they can do that, they'll win. And what did they do? Louisville took a lot of threes, I think 37 in that game, and they only made 8 of them.
Yeah,
so there you go.
That's not going to win you a game.
No.
Yeah. Well, they definitely didn't win them the game. It got close there. It got close there at the end. But Arkansas needed that. Coach Calipari even said after the game, he said, I didn't like how close it was at the end there, but we needed that. We needed to see that this team could be battle tested all throughout until the end of a game and still pull out a win. And that's what they needed to know, that they could do that against a top 25 opponent. And that's what they did.
Courtney, in the last segment, we talked about LeBaron Philon, and he is coming off of SEC Player of the Week honors. And one freshman that you've been telling us to keep our eye on is Darius Acuff Jr., and he was tabbed with SEC Freshman of the Week honors last week. Are we starting to see him develop into this key piece for Arkansas moving forward?
I think you've already been seeing he's a key piece of this offense. The guard play of this team has been electric all season, and it really starts with those 2 freshmen in Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas, who I both talked about and gushed about on the show. But Darius Acuff, once again, in that game, right, you had Trevin Brazil start off with just an amazing performance. He had some huge plays early on, 2 back-to-back threes, and then he was kind of setting the tone. He had 17 of his 21 points in that first half. But then he had to leave the game due to injury for just a little bit. He did come back in the game, and it was Darius Acuff that kind of said, okay, time to pick it up where he left off. And that's where you saw him, 17 points, 10 assists, a double-double for him on the night. And so, yeah, you're definitely – I don't think you're starting to see him come into his own, because he always knew from the jump, and this team knew from the jump they were going to need to rely on him. It's a reason why Boogie Fland went to Florida. They had one of the top freshmen coming in, and they're like, that's going to be our point guard. Sorry, Boogie, but you're talented, but we just can't. We have too many guards. We have too many guards, and we already have a guy that's going to take your minutes. Sorry, no offense. Hopefully none taken, man. Go to Florida, go do your thing. But that's a reason why, because everybody knew, and especially this coaching staff knew, that Darius Acuff was going to come in and show everybody that, hey, he is a huge and key piece of this team. Malik Thomas as well. I think, honestly, people were surprised a little bit that, hey, Malik Thomas coming in here, coming off the bench and doing what he's been able to do in games. But Darius Acuff, no surprise there. We kind of knew. This is as advertised, so to speak.
For sure. Every time I listen to John Calipari, whether it's clips at practice and he's yelling at his guys, then he comes back and talks to the media about his team, and he's usually really brutally honest about where they are, what they're doing terribly. That's normally where he starts and where he finishes. Last time he said it, and he said it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also in a way where it's like, I wonder how he's going to do that. He said, we have to go back to 8th grade basketball, and he made it look like we're going to – he stupefied it, for example. He just said, we'll pass the ball here, and almost if you're a player, I think if you're in the wrong headspace, you could take that the wrong way. But given the results of the last 2 games, it feels like whatever he did has kind of worked.
You're exactly right. And the 8th grade basketball line was really because he wanted to see his players pass the ball more. And so when I shoot the games, I sit right by their bench. So I can hear what he's saying to them. And I can tell you guys right here on the show, the amount of times I see that man get up and go, pass the ball, pass the freaking ball. And so I've seen him do that.
I'm sure
That's
he wasn't
Coach
PG
Fowler
about it.
I was. Don't worry.
Yeah, you were. I don't think he was.
Thank you for saving us that
Not
fine.
trying to get fired today. Okay. My boss watches the show. Thank you, but I'm just trying to get fired today. But how many times I've heard him say that is a lot this season. And so he wasn't kidding when he was like, I think we need to go back to 8th grade basketball because they're trying to play hero ball, right? They're trying to play too much hero ball. Oh gosh, I've got to take over. I've got to get to the bucket and I've got to score. When you have an open man on the wing that's waiting for it, you have an open man, that you can dish it out to that's going to be that's open, that can get that bucket a lot better than you. And so that's what he's trying to instill in them, right? That's 8th grade basketball, because I remember when I was back in, high school, even high school, not even middle school, even high school, we would do passing drills where we had to pass the ball 5 or 6 times before we could even score, before we were even allowed to touch that rim, right?
Yeah.
We had to pass that ball 5 or 6 times. And so that's what he was saying. But it's working, right? It's working. Going back to the basics. I mean, goodness gracious, you can go back to Darius Acuff having a double-double, right? 10 assists. That's what he wants to see moving forward from his guards. And that's what you're kind of seeing. Not exactly to the point where you want it to be, but definitely in the right direction.
Spinning it forward here, a tough one this weekend against a really good Texas Tech team led by a guy that I think the SEC is going to have to start learning his name in JT Toppin. How do you slow down a guy that's averaging a double-double?
You got to play really well, right? How do you slow him down? You've got to play really well, and it's going to take the whole team. I've said this before this season. There can't just be a Darius Acuff, and there can't just be a Malik Thomas, and there can't just be a Trevin Brazile. This team thrives when they use the entire 8-man rotation. Really, truly. They can't just have good guard play. They can't have their bigs taking a night off. They have to work together. And so to me, it's going to take a complete game from this team. That's how they did it against Louisville. I think you can look at the tape from that and go, okay, everybody contributed in some way. Even in small ways on the stat sheet, right? Or even ways that don't show up on the stat sheet, everybody contributed. And that's what they're going to need to do against Texas Tech. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be a fun game. Yes. I hate that it's at 11 a.m., but this is going to be a fun game. You have guys on this team that remember what happened last year.
Yep.
That you have a Carter Knox, you have a Billy Richmond, you have a Trevin Brazile, you have a DJ Wagner, you have 2 guys who didn't play in the game on the bench that said, we know what this means. I mean, we asked Darius Acuff in the postgame presser after that win over Fresno State this past week. He said, I wasn't a part of that game. I watched that game. I know what this means to this team. I want to win it for these guys. Yeah. These guys deserve a win. It's going to be the emotions of this game is going to be what's interesting to me. Yeah. Because I really do believe that Arkansas, and both teams are very talented, don't get me wrong. Whoever's going to show up more for it is going to win this game, quite honestly. And what Arkansas needs to do is exactly what they did, exactly what they kind of didn't do in that game last year, really, was crash the boards. Texas Tech is so good at rebounding this year. They were last year as well, but they are this year. That's one of their strengths. And so for me, it's like you have got to crash the glass, and offensively too. I think Texas Tech is like second in the conference in offensive rebounding right now. And so you have got to crash the boards. They did that against Louisville. They did. Now, Fresno State won the rebounding battle, not by much on Saturday, but Arkansas found a way to win that game in other ways, leaning on things that weren't their strengths, and they used them to be their strengths in that game, so it worked. But in this game, I know Coach Cal is going in there saying, we better crash the boards. You better rebound. You better be aggressive and physical when you're in the paint. I know you can do that. You've done that against Louisville. You can do it against Texas Tech. Guys, I'm going to be honest. This one's a little harder to predict.
Oh, that's where I was
We're
going next.
I'm just saying.
Crystal ball.
Just saying.
Crystal ball it.
Okay.
All right, I'll pose this to you then. Here's
Okay.
Courtney's crystal ball. Who's gonna end up with more points, Darius Acuff Jr. or JT Toppin?
I'm gonna say JT Toppin.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, really,
That
because
makes sense. That makes sense.
because Darius isn't gonna. Darius is absolutely a wonderful scorer. He absolutely is, but he's there for what the team needs, right? And so that's what I kind of said. Trevin Brazile had 17 of his 21 points in that first half of that Louisville game. Trevin Brazile set the tone. Right. Darius Acuff kind of said, "All right, let me do this now." You know what I mean? He kind of he fills whatever gap you need. And so to me, that's why JT Toppin is going to be a guy who scores more points than him. However, I am going to say this. If I had to guess, I think Arkansas's emotions of this game are really going to take over. Okay. And I truly believe that Arkansas is going to win this one. It's going to be close.
Nice.
It's going to be close.
Nice.
But I
might listen to you.
Okay. I'm just saying they're both really talented teams. When you look on paper, you're like, man, this is hard. This is hard. But I think Arkansas learned something about themselves in that win over Louisville. And Cal said it. We needed to close out a close game.
Yeah.
We need when Louisville was coming back, and I think it was like they got within 5 in the second half. I think Coach Cal, you could see it on his face. He knew this needed to happen, and he knew, okay, this is what we need to go through, so that we know what this is like, and we can do it on the road at a neutral site. But there's a lot of Hog fans in Dallas. There's a lot of Texas Tech fans there too.
Yes, right.
So.
Yeah. You stole my next question, because if you watched the game at Jerry World, the football game, Texas Tech and BYU, that place was a sea of red, and you knew that there was a lot of Texas Tech people that were in Dallas. I wonder if it's the same way for Arkansas. I know Arkansas is one of their most famous alum is Jared Jones, and he lives out in Dallas. but I wonder, is there enough of an Arkansas fan base to be able to put a dent there in that capacity there where the Mavs play?
Well, I'll give you a little, I guess, a little stat for you here. Okay. I'll just give you a little stat to kind of prove my point here. Yes, I know there's going to be a lot of Texas Tech fans there. That obviously. But I'll say this. When we look at our YouTube statistics, and when I was working for Pig Trail Nation, same goes for Fox 16. When we look at our YouTube statistics of who watches our content about the Razorbacks, do you know the highest city that it's viewed in?
Really? Is it Dallas?
Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
It's not Little Rock, Arkansas.
Right.
Little Rock's the next one.
Yeah.
So it's Dallas, then Little Rock. It's not even Fayetteville. Fayetteville's like 4th on the list.
Right.
Of like cities.
Come on, we got to get our act together over there.
It's just a lot of people who end up moving to Dallas, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the alumni base is good.
Yeah.
We know that in Dallas. My question is, how many are going to show up? Because 11 a.m. games.
It's early.
I know this from Arkansas fans. It's like, oh, we want to go get brunch. We want to. No.
Go to the game.
Go to the game.
Exactly.
Okay. Go to the. If you're not going to this game, I don't know how to help you. You're not a sports fan. You don't care. This game is a rematch of a Sweet 16 matchup that went to overtime in San Francisco. I was there. I was panicking. It was a crazy, crazy atmosphere. If you're not going to this game, what are you doing? What are you doing?
In your sportscasts for the next couple of days, I want you to say literally that. Every single time, and rally the fans to get there.
Done.
Courtney,
Gerhard.
you are so awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here on Southeast Sports Plus.
Thank you, guys. I love coming on the show. You guys are the best, seriously.
The feeling's mutual, my friend. Courtney Mims is joining us from Arkansas. Big game there against Texas Tech. Coming up next, we go to the Lone Star State. We were talking about Dallas. Let's go over to the state of Texas, and we'll join up with Parker Reed next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we step out of the footprint for just 1 second here. Breaking news today is coming from Adam Schefter, Pete Thamel, and Dan Wetzel. Sharon Moore has been fired for cause as the Michigan head football coach. Of course, this comes as a shock to a lot of people in and around college football. This program has been in a lot of hot water for a long time. It goes all the way back to the Condor Stallions and Jim Harbaugh. They thought they found some solid footing with Sharon Moore. That is now not the case anymore. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Patrick, you are the one that broke this just moments ago, able to get that video and that graphic up. How did this land?
You know, we don't know what the cause is yet, but it's hard to not think about, obviously, what we talked about to open up the year with the whole Jim Harbaugh and the sign stealing scandal.
Right.
And there was some talk about, Sharon Moore has that show cause in place, and we don't know exactly. We're going to wait until everything comes out before we can say exactly what the cause is. But, I mean, this is definitely a shock, something that I didn't expect to see coming here today. So we're going to have to see what happens here moving forward.
Absolutely. We were joined by our good friend Parker Ream. We were talking about this during the break about this now bombshell, number one, report, but then also, two, one of the highest profile jobs in the entire sport now coming open. How did this land for you? I know you just digested this less than 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. And we were talking about that too, how they fill it. I think with this coaching carousel, this might be the busiest coaching carousel we've ever seen in college football. Just it seems, especially in the SEC, there's been a ton of changes, and now in the Big Ten too. Two of the premier programs in the Big Ten without head coaches, and obviously Penn State just filled theirs with Matt Campbell. So does I don't know, do they turn to the Big 12 and look maybe like Lance Leipold from Kansas? I was just kind of like going through coaches that could potentially make the change. Sonny Dykes from TCU.
And I think to tack on to your point, because I think you're a good one, because of the fact there were so many jobs open, the domino effect of that was that all the coaches that were the top candidates all got extensions, including Mike Elko at Texas A&M, including Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. All these guys ended up getting extensions with their school. It just feels like it's now the market's locked up even more now because of the crazy recruiting cycle we just had, or crazy coaching cycle we just had.
You know, the only thing I could think of is Michigan obviously has all of the money in the world.
Yes.
They could easily buy out Matt Rule's contract from Nebraska.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like at this point you have to,
right?
Because there's no time,
right?
You're not going to find a guy. I mean, all the coaches have been taken. You're going to have to basically pluck it from another school. And I mean, Matt Rule, there was some maybe connection with Penn State. Obviously, you know, he has ties there before, but they're going to have to get somebody that's already locked up probably to this extension.
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable news coming out of there. That's not why we brought
that is not why.
On, but thank you so much.
I can talk about Matt Rule, though. Obviously, when he was at Baylor, he said the same thing. I'm not leaving. I'm staying. I like Waco. And then ended up leaving for the NFL. And then this time around, Baylor fans were very quick to let Nebraska fans know if he says that might not be the case. So could be a Patrick might be onto something there if they throw a bunch of money at him. I mean that's one of the best jobs in college football. I don't see how anybody could turn that down.
Oh, for sure. We're just tossing around some of those big names there. But one of the big names that I think would have been tossed around not that long ago is the coach for the Texas A&M Aggies, and Mike Elko, one of the hottest commodities before he signed his extension with the team. Of course, he led his team now to the college football playoff. When you saw the results on Sunday and you saw the matchup on Sunday, considering all the consternation that happened before it with Notre Dame and Miami, number one, how did it land for you, your guys, and the fan base there in College Station?
Well, at least in Aggieland, it's good that they locked down Mike Elko for a considerable amount of time now. And they did it when, realistically, the Aggies were winning. They hadn't dropped a game yet. And but I felt like this is exactly where most Texas A&M fans thought they would be. And Texas A&M in general. They were ranked 7th. They thought they were probably going to be 7th. It was just a matter of who do they play. And obviously, we've heard a lot from Notre Dame's athletic director. We've heard a lot from Notre Dame opting out of a bowl game, getting fined for that subsequently. So I just think not many people expected Miami to be the opponent on the other side. a lot of us were expecting a rematch of that regular season game in South Bend, except this time it would be at Kyle Field. But I still think you talk about two brands like Texas A&M and Miami. It's going to be a pretty good game on the 20th.
Yeah.
When you compare these two teams, what sticks out to you the most?
I think probably the offenses when they're on is what really sticks out to me. And you see it right here. I mean, talk about perfect timing. Just really two high-powered offenses. But with the Aggies, it's the defensive component that draws a lot of eyes. And Cassius Howell actually winning the SEC Defensive Player of the Year today. That just dropped. So we'll throw that in the show today. But one of the best pass rushers in not only the SEC but the nation.
Right.
Can he get to the quarterback? I think that's probably going to be the biggest point of emphasis in this game, is putting pressure on Miami's offensive line and whether they can get through. And if they can, I think Texas A&M's got a really good shot to face Ohio State in that Cotton Bowl. But it pans out really well for the Aggies. You get basically two home games.
Yes.
If you're in the first two rounds of the college football playoff, one at your actual home and then another maybe in your home away from home in Arlington. And I mean, from a coverage standpoint, it also works out pretty well for us too.
Right, absolutely. Less distance there on the road.
Exactly.
From an actual game planning, game point standpoint, this is a team for the first 10 weeks of the season. I think a lot of people were kind of holding their breath. Okay, maybe this is the week where we see the drop off. We never saw it. Throughout the first maybe 9-10 games, and then of course the South Carolina game happens. It's, obviously the Aggies win the game, but it takes what it takes there in the second half. Take the Stanford game out, then you have Texas there to end off the season. Given the results of two of the last three games, is there any concern for this team as they move into the college football playoff against a red-hot Miami team?
Yeah, I think people have every right to be concerned maybe when you lay it out like that, right? You have the past three games, and really the only one that you played particularly well in throughout the entire game was against Samford. So I think that's maybe cause for concern, but also they've had 3 weeks to stew before they play Miami on that Texas loss. And I think they've been trying to put that in the past and really not letting it weigh them down. We heard from Coach Elko right after the selection, and everybody in that locker room is just excited to be playing back at Kyle Field, have the 12th man behind them, and welcome Miami for the first time, I think, in 3 years. And the last time they welcomed Miami into Kyle Field, they took them down. So I think that's maybe cause for celebration, at least from a head-to-head perspective.
You talked about that Texas game there. Are you concerned that the layoff is going to be a little bit too much? Because I believe it's going to be 22 games in between when that Texas game was played and when the first round kicks off there at Kyle Field.
Yeah, that's always the tricky question with whether but also you have that same component with Ohio State in the top 4 seeds.
Right.
How long are they taking off? And Kurt Cignetti with Indiana said, I got all this time to prepare my guys to go play in the college football playoff. I think that sometimes bodes well, and for A&M, injury-wise, I think particularly it's helping them. They're slated to get Le'Veon Moss back. Mike Elko said he looks great. That's their starting running back through and through. And when he's healthy, this run game looks a heck of a lot more explosive than it does without him. And I think that is something they particularly were missing against Texas, was something to take the safeties from dropping back and taking out Marcel Reed's game plan. And now maybe if they can get that run game going, that takes away that component entirely and lets Marcel Reed go to his playmakers, which Casey Concepcion just won the most versatile playmaker in all of college football, that award. So, another piece of content we're running today. But they got playmakers all across the board, and I think if they game plan it correctly, they can do that. But also that Texas game really showed a lot of people what these weaknesses might be for Texas A&M. And I think Miami's probably going to try to exploit some of that as well.
For sure. The Texas A&M defense, I find it's going to be really interesting the way they're tested, because if you were to make a Heisman Trophy preseason list, and I didn't know where they fell on the odds, but you'd have some semblance of of Arch Manning, maybe Lenora Sellers somewhere down in the top 5, top 10, somewhere in there, and then maybe Carson Beck as far as top 10 guys go. Those are 3 of the last 4 quarterbacks they would have played. Carson Beck coming up in this matchup. What does his defense have to do to be able to maybe slow him down? And it's kind of interesting that all his time at Georgia, he never did cross against the Aggies.
Yeah, that is kind of random. They haven't played the Georgia Bulldogs that often in recent memory, and I think it might just happen to be where they are positioned in the conference, in the different sides of the conference. But yeah, I think he's another talent that they got a game plan for. And like you said, kind of in that Heisman race at the beginning of the season, also maybe midway through the season, and then Miami dropping off after a couple losses, and probably his Heisman hope races with that as well. So I think they just got to play actually very similar to Arch Manning, take away those throws, force him to have to beat them. And I think that's what they did with Jackson Arnold. I think that's kind of what they did with Arch Manning, but Arch Manning used his legs to really open up the passing game. And I think that's something they can't let happen in this game, because if they do, it's going to be a very similar result to that Lone Star Showdown.
No doubt. We got a chance to hear from Coach Mike Elko on making the college football playoff.
Yeah, no, not really. I think obviously there was excitement yesterday to sit in the watch party and see our name go up on the screen, and that's not, that moment's not lost on the team or on me, but we have aspirations to do a lot more than just sit in a room and see our name get put on a screen. And so I think very quickly it shifted to now we have an opponent, we have a focus. I think you could feel the energy lift. We kind of went right out of there into a team meeting and to get to work on kind of where this thing was going. And so yeah, it's obviously it's the first step is getting in, but I think we want to try to do a little bit more than that.
With quarterback Marcel Reed, there's been some concerns, not huge ones, because he's always been able to bounce back from an injury standpoint. Where does he stand right now, and how will he use these next about 3 weeks to get himself ready for that big matchup?
I think he should be a full go, 100% for this matchup. And like we mentioned before, the extra rest has definitely helped that cause. He looked fine after going down in that injury against Texas, and really immediately was testing out that knee to make sure that he was good to go. But I don't think anybody could take him off the field in that kind of game. I think this time they need him to be a contender in this college football playoff. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to let anything at this point, it's win or go home. And in this case, they are home, but they would still like to win and keep that train going.
Parker, I know we threw you on and got your real life takes there on Sherrone Moore as that news was just breaking. Thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus on Texas A&M and Michigan football.
Yeah, of course. Just do it all.
Absolutely. Parker Reeve joining us. And by the way, he broke some SEC news because I saw the email come through, but I did not know those individual winners. So shout out to Parker Reeve for that. Absolutely. Making a newsworthy segment here to close out our show here today. We have one more segment. We will close out Southeast Sports Plus. Stay with us. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we close out our program, and typically, you know, the way that the show works from an emotional standpoint, always want to leave on a high note. You want to leave with something good, something fun, something emotional, something cool, something great, something that puts a smile on your face. But it's not been a good week in baseball for my man Patrick,
No.
and today it just got a little worse with another SEC tie-in.
Yeah, the former Florida Gator, Pete Alonso, and the longtime New York Met. That's his face right there is probably how Mets fans feel right now. He agrees to a deal with the Baltimore Orioles, 5 years, $155 million. He becomes the highest paid AAV first baseman in MLB history,
Wow.
and I gotta say, so obviously it's no secret, I'm a Mets fan. We kind of went over that yesterday with talking about Edwin Diaz. This one, at first, I was like, okay, you know what? Like, what are we doing at this point? Like, what are the Mets doing?
Right.
Like you have no plan at this point. I knew there was going to be some major shakeups to happen because you cannot just roll the same team out and after the collapse that you had last year and just expect a different result. I didn't really expect Alonso, Nimmo, and Edwin Diaz to all be gone within a 2-week strain, a 2-week span.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, you got Marcus Semien out of it,
right?
But at the same time, you just lost 3 of your core pieces, and I would expect second baseman and actually utility man Jeff McNeil to probably be traded by the week's end. But the more and more I think about it, I'm not actually as mad now.
Okay.
Because this is a guy who I'm not mad because of what the contract is.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to pay a guy that all he does is hit bombs? Yeah, you know, last season is where the average started to creep up.
Right.
For a guy that's aging and is a one-dimensional player, he cannot play defense that well. He doesn't run the bases, and he doesn't have a great arm. So how are you going to pay a guy $33 million per year, I believe it was?
Right.
For a man that just hits home runs when you have Freddie Freeman out in L.A., who's back-to-back World Series champ 3 times in his career, who honestly, you know, I've always felt this way. Freddie Freeman is a better first baseman than Pete Alonso,
no question.
and he is not getting paid the same amount.
No. And I wonder if some of that contract came on the heels of the Schwarber contract.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously, Schwarber, I think he signed for 150.
Yeah, and I honestly thought,
yeah.
okay, Schwarber's going back to Philly. This means, all right, the Mets don't have to worry about trying to get him. The Mets are going to go after Alonso now. But then it came out that the Mets never formally offered Pete Alonso. I'm like, okay, you know, now we're starting to see in a 2-day span, Edwin Diaz signs with the Dodgers, didn't even inquire about the Mets offer, even though it was just $3 million less. And then the Mets never formally offered Pete Alonso anything. So, I mean, this has just been an interesting 2-day stretch. Some people might think it's one of the worst 2-day stretches, but really,
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So when you pulled up that graphic, I had to pull up their schedule last year to ask this question. They won 83 games last year.
Yep.
How many, of course, on the right on the outside looking into the playoffs, how many wins has been taken away from this team with the move so far? Or is it addition by subtraction by getting rid of some of these guys and being able to get better for next year?
It all depends on where they go next. And that guy right there, Cody Bellinger, would be a nice start.
Yeah.
There's been some talks about that guy as well, Framber Valdez, and then Kyle Tucker, who we'll see right there. It's going to – yeah, I know you're a Cubbies guy. But to me, where this franchise goes and what we can grade the Pete Alonso missing out on Pete Alonso, what you can give that grade all depends on what happens next, because there's obviously got to be some plan here. I know a lot of people want to hate on David Stearns, but I do think he does have a plan in place, and they got to shake up the core somehow. I think, honestly, if you get Kyle Tucker and if you get either Alex Bregman or Cody Bellinger to go with maybe making a trade for Fernando Tatis, I know that's in the works, alongside a starter, you're fine. I mean, honestly, you're paying that much money for – I mean, if you paid Pete Alonso that much money, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would have been shocked. But now you're going to have more versatility at different positions, and you can fill a bunch of needs. So
maybe.
I was angry at first, but, now I'm like, okay, maybe it's going to be fine.
He's in the acceptance stage. Southeast Sports Plus returns tomorrow.